Hey there, commercial construction coffee talk fans. Thanks for chiming in. My name's David Corson. I'm your host. I'm also the publisher and editor of Commercial Construction and Renovation Magazine. This is what it used to look like. I got a little halo on there, but anyway, uh, been around for almost 25 years, but went digital 100% August of 21. This was June of 2020, and had Mr. Briggs and Mr. Clancy on the cover. They're up in Columbia, South Carolina, and this was a good looking issue. Let's see how big this one was. This was 132 pages. I always like to see what I was doing back then, 5 years ago. I was actually looking at the NL, our indoor lacrosse team. They won the championship in 2017. So I got to get my picture by the cup, and I got a couple alumni guys that are on that team. But I always like holding the magazine in my hands and see what I was doing, and but I don't miss the post office, don't miss the printer, and going digital. Had just under 49 million people hit the website last year consuming content. So all of you out there on the wild, wild web, we appreciate you finding us and reading our content, etc. And couldn't have done it without you. So you're gold in my eyes. But hopefully everybody out there is having it's hump day today. A little cloudy, very, very cold, and we're in the last phase of my empty nester house built up on the lake. They're painting today. They're putting the primer up, and then we're getting into trim, and then it's all downhill from there. So by the end of March, my the house will be done, and then we got to figure out if we're going to keep it or if we're going to sell it. We're not sure what we're going to do, but it sure has been fun. Dealing with the municipalities and permitting and all that stuff, and it's been a wild and crazy ride to say the least. Never a dull moment on the residential construction site. So, but listen, I've got an icon on the podcast this morning. His name is Nick Tricarico, and he's an architect, and he's with Tricarico, which is an architecture firm out of Wayne, New Jersey, up in North Jersey, right across the river from the Big Apple. Nick, welcome to the show. Say hello to our listeners out there on Commercial Construction Coffee Talk.
Well, good morning, David, and good morning to all your listeners.
Yeah.
I'm very happy to be part of the podcast.
Yeah,
Thank you very
no, hey,
much.
listen, it's uh, Nick, I've known you probably 25 years,
At
most likely,
least.
at least. I was at Nielsen in 99, and when I started my construction book, and then went out on my own in December 17th, 2001, right after nine
Right,
eleven, and
right.
haven't looked back since. And it's been a roller coaster, and but I'm still standing today, and I still have fun. And just like yourself, you've been designing all sorts of projects over the years, and you still like what you do, and you got a smile on your face, and you're still having fun, right?
Well, I want to tell you that I have a few years on you, David, in that I've actually been licensed as an architect for 52 years. Forget about how many years I've been working in the retail business. Uh, and I hate to say because then it just people start saying, well, how old is Nick Tricarico? I actually had my first job in an architectural office in 1962. I'm sure you weren't even born in
I was born
1962.
in '63. You were 1 year old.
Oh, okay. So I had worked for my uncle John, who was a Brooklyn architect, and I was brought there by my father because he knew I didn't want to try to be a lawyer or a doctor, and so he brought me to my uncle John, and I did some little drawings, did a lot of blueprinting because in the old days you would blueprint by hand
Oh
to
yeah.
make one sheet at a time with ammonia, and it stunk up the whole office. But in any case, so I started in 62. In 63, I graduated from high school, and then I worked for a couple of years for architects and friends, mostly in the family. And then in 65, went to Kent State University in Ohio. Ended up getting my Bachelor of Architecture pre shootings at Kent. For those of you who know what Kent State was all about, and came out, drove through the night, Um, it was a great drive. I was so excited. I had my Bachelor of Architecture. Got home in the middle of the morning. I want to say 5, 6 a.m. in the morning. Contacted a buddy of mine who I had worked with when I was working prior to going to college for my 5 year degree. And what happened is he said, "Why don't we have lunch?" And I said, "Well, yeah, okay, let's have lunch." I didn't sleep through the night. It didn't matter. And so I go into the city to have lunch, and we have lunch, and he brings me to his office, and there's a guy, and this was in June, a guy dressing a mannequin. And I said, "Wow, what business are you in?" He says, "Well, I am an architect for a retail company." I said, "Well, that's really too bad. Is that I'm going to go work for Skidmore, Owens and Merrill." And he said, "Well, if you go work for Skidmore, Owens and Merrill, you're actually going to be doing probably door details and window details, probably for only 4 or 5 years." I said, 4 or 5 years? That's crazy. He said, "Not only that, Nick, you're going to get drafted. You're going to be in the draft." And I said, "Wow." So he said, "I want you to work for me." And I said, "Well, if you want me to work for you, you're going to have to pay me $9,000 a year." And he said, "Start tomorrow morning." And I said, "Oh my God, I could have gotten $9,200. Why did I ask for only $9,000?
Yeah.
But in any case, so I did. I did not get drafted. If everybody recalls, they had, this lottery thing and numbers and so on. I ended up falling in love in the retail end. And within about 4 or 5 months, because they were building stores, the name of the company was Ormond, Ormond, and they were a junior apparel popular price brand. And what happened is that then they made me the construction manager. And so I had an opportunity to be in the field for 3 or 4 years. That's where you learn about architecture, not on a drafting board, but being in the field, seeing an electrician wiring a job, putting a floor down, pouring concrete, putting a ceiling in, units going up on a roof, and so on. And I used to tell people that what you see in a store is the same thing you're going to see in an office building, is the same thing you're going to see in a doctor's office or in a vet place or wherever. It's the same process. Is you go through the same process. I come back, my buddy moves on, they make me the VP. So
Ooh.
in 19, I want to say in 1969, I started with that firm. In 1975, I was a VP for the company. I'm very proud to be a VP. And over the years, I stayed till 1980. I had gotten calls for moving on to someone else and so on. I only wanted to go to one company, which was a company called Melville. So just tracing back a little bit, just before I became the VP, I ended up getting married. I had my license in 1972. So I've been licensed over 50 years as an architect. I had 2 children. My daughter, Nicole, who's going to be 50 in April, and my son, Peter, who's an acupuncturist, and he's going to be 47 in April. By the way, my daughter, Nicole, is a director here at Tricarico, and she's also handling interior design. But going forward is that in 1980, I received a call from a company called Melville Corporation. Melville was the largest specialty retailer in the world. And they said to me, we'd like to, actually, I had gotten a call from a headhunter, and they wanted me to interview for a company, wouldn't tell me the name. And I said, well, I'm only going to work for a company called Melville. I have to pass on this. They said, but do you really want to interview for this company? I said, but I only want to interview if there was a company called Melville who wanted to interview me. And they went on and they said, you want to interview for this company? I said, oh my God, this must be Melville. So I ended up going and I interviewed with the headhunter, and then I interviewed with the head or the VP of personnel. It wasn't called anything else other than personnel. And then the co-chairman. And I remember every time I interviewed, I said, if you want to talk to me, you've got to do it either at night or you're going to do it on a weekend. I don't take off from my current job just to do an interview. And every time they said, really? And then I interviewed with the co-chairman, and the co-chairman said to me, we want you to interview with the chairman. And by the way, if you're going to interview with him, you are going to show up during the day. And I did. And I got the job. And I started in 1980. My job was only to do maybe, I want to say 1,100, 1,200 stores a year. And I stayed there and I became this, I was the VP of real estate, became the senior VP of real estate, general manager of construction for Melville Corporation. And I went for about 7 years. I will tell you that I did a lot of review of the construction portions of a lease. And I would just bust chops with landlords, et cetera, over the years, and got a lot of great deals for the company just on the construction portion. In 1987, I had a new boss. It was a great guy, 𝐑𝐄𝐋𝐀𝐓𝐄𝐃, who was the president of Melville Realty and not the co-chairman of Melville Corp, who was retiring. And what happened is that he was looking for a different type of thing to happen and came into my office one day and said, by the way, we're making a change. So I said, what kind of change? He says, a change in your position. I said, well, it sounds like you're going to fire me. He said, well, we're going to make a change. I said, Dan, if you're going to fire me, that's fine. I'm a big guy and I have no problem. And it was a deal, by the way, it was a deal made in heaven. I'm not going to share that with anybody, but it was a deal made in heaven for me. I'm driving back to my home and I said, I'm going to go into business. That night, I got calls from different people that were friends from Melville, et cetera, some vendors. And I think that night I had 3 jobs already. And I didn't even have a company. And I started on those jobs on Monday. And eventually what happened is that I worked over the warehouse of one of my clients. I ended up moving out of there in about 4 or 5 months, bought a house, converted it into an office, ended up having about 24 people there, ended up moving to another place in Totowa, took 15,000 square feet. And I was very scared that I was going to have 15,000 square feet, but we built the company up to a lot of people. And then eventually I was able to buy a building myself, 30,000 square feet. We moved into that, bought another building, but we're now located in a building that houses 11,000 square feet for us. We could put 100 people in. Obviously, during the last 5 years, there was a shutdown of a lot of work, and we reshaped what we were going to be about. So to give everybody an idea, when I first started in business, I was Nicholas J. Tricarico Architect. And then I said, wow, I got to really become a corporation. And from a liability point of view, although I will say from a liability point of view, if you're an architect, it passes through the veil of a corporation. If you're going to get sued, fortunately, we knock on wood, we've never been sued. You get sued, your corporation gets sued, but you personally could get sued as a professional, the doctors, the lawyers, the architects. So, I mean, I look back and say, I really, really want to be an architect. I will say that today I'm really more of a manager. I manage the business. We manage our projects. Our drawing part of it is really minimally done. And, although we have changed our business and we're at, I want to say 48, 49 people, we still do 500 projects a year. I remember in the 90s, we were doing 1,000 projects a year. Overall, as a licensed architect, I have over 30,000 projects I've done as the architect of record. Quite a
That's
few
awesome.
projects.
And you
I'll
probably
tell you,
remember every one of them, right?
I know every one of them and the location. You don't really believe that, David, do you? But in any case,
I'll let you go 29,000.
I will tell you, some of my clients I don't remember, but I will tell you that there are projects that when we get a new project in Elephant's Breath, Montana, there's no such thing. But I will say to my guys and ladies, by the way, we did a store in there 8 years ago, or 10, or 15 years ago. Because you can realize from 1987, when I left Melville, I went into business. So it's really, at this point, 13, 20, 37 years. So it's a lot of years that I've been in business in different names. The name of the firm, by the way, is Tricarico Architecture and Design PC. And it has grown over the years for different reasons. I think one of the reasons was maybe my license in Alaska. Although when I left Melville in 87, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about Melville too. Some of you may know what Melville's all about. But in 87, I had only 49 licenses. Since that time, I ended up getting a few more licenses, Alaska and I was going to say San Juan, Puerto Rico, and so on. So I have 53 licenses, 50 states, Washington, D.C., and 52 licenses, and Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to Melville and how I got that job is that I used to go into shopping centers all the time. And in the 80s, if you remember or don't remember, all they were building were enclosed shopping centers as the majority of retail. And what happened is there. I remember one day in August that I had 10 stores in the shopping center I was going to see for the grand opening, but I think we had 300 stores under construction. Mind-boggling. At that point, I would say that I knew quite a bit about locations anywhere in the United States. And in my position, of course, I oversaw design, contract documents, maintenance, purchasing, and had a little bit of a share of overseeing the wording of all of the construction information for a lease, for all of the retail divisions that were specialty. So I didn't oversee Marshalls. So you now know that Marshalls was part of Melville. I didn't oversee CVS Drugs. It was part of Melville. So, or Linens and Things, which was part of Melville. So what happens, Tom McCann, which had about 3 or 4 divisions, Oakland Country, Prince Plus, Wilson Suede and Leather, KB Toy and Hobby, et cetera, et cetera. Those are some names that are not around anymore, but that all came under me. There were about, I want to say about 25, 26 specialty retail stores that I had done. So in that era between 1969, where I didn't want to do any retail the day I first met with my friend, to today, we have over 30,000 projects that I was the architect of record on. That's a little bit about where we're at. I mentioned that my daughter Nicole, someone would say, wow, she's a director and she's head of design. I would say that she's 50 in April, She's been with me since 16, other than her schooling and college. So she has a lot of years of experience and oversees CDs and the design group and some of our newer clients like Pop Mart, which is out of China and so on. So that's a little bit something about how I grew up in the business and so on. A lot of it is luck to be able to be put into a position that I didn't want to be put in and fell in love with the retail end and then got a chance to work for Melville, the largest specialty retailer in the world at that time. And then having the opportunity to go into my own business, Melville made it really easy for me to flow into it. And the best part of it is that a year later, is that Melville had a drafting department of about 50, 60 people when I was at Melville. A year later, they brought in a senior VP who disbanded the whole department and hired 26 architects. I had gone back to the guy who fired me and said, Dan, I'd like to be one of those architects. He said, Nick, you know more about Melville than anybody we could ever hire. And he went down to the senior VP and said, Nick is an architect. Then they ended up 2 years later, and I don't want to tell you how much money I made doing Melville as the architect and not being working for them. But then a couple of years later, they got rid of all the architects and they had only three, one on the East Coast, one in Texas, one in California, and Nick Tricarico was not one of the architects. So I picked up the phone, I called Dan again, and I said, Dan, I want to be one of the architects. He walked downstairs again and said, you got to understand, Nick is one of our architects. And I did a ton of work for Melville after I had left. So that's a little bit of a summary, although it was probably a very long summary of how I even got into this business, although I did start in 1962 and did work prior to going to college and then being in the retail end.
Hey, when you saw that mannequin, you could have become a visual merchandiser at that part.
Oh my God. Well, I wanted to do everything.
That was the first thing that popped in my head. The guy's like, hey, Matt, this is called
I
visual
will say,
merchandising, right?
David, I love that retail. I loved it. I loved being with the people. I loved opening the stores. I loved every part of retail and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My parents, on my dad's side, he was in upholstery furniture, and we
Right.
had a showroom at 32nd and Lex in the city, and he had gotten his line in. He was a pilot, and Gary Levitz from Levitz Furniture, they were pilot buds, and so when I say Levitz, so when I got out of,
Yeah.
I went to DU out, and I was a hockey lacrosse player. I went out west to play. Anyway, when I got out of school, I did my retail training before I had to go down to the plant in the mid 80s. Uh, I worked for Levitz. I went in the management training
Sure.
program. I
Sure.
I put together more of those little loss leader brass tables. I emptied 18 wheelers of chassis. I scotch guarded. I was a
Yeah.
picker. I did customer service. I mean, I did everything. I ran the scratch and dent
Sure.
and learned as much retail as I could. And then when it came time for me to go down to Hickory, North Carolina, where they had one hotel and one restaurant at the time, and it was during the recession in the 80s, and buying a love seat or a living room set was probably not on the top three of people's list, other
Right.
than putting
Right.
food on the table. I just decided that it just wasn't my bag, but it was great training, and I still remember where my desk was, the visual merchandising warehouse, call it whatever you want, where they had all lamps and all that stuff, and it was so when you said the mannequin, I was like, oh my God, he was a visual merchandiser too.
Sure.
And I
Sure.
didn't even know what visual merchandiser was until I went in and I saw this thing, and the girls,
Sure.
oh yeah, we dress things up to make it look nice and this and that. And the biggest thing was, like, when we used to walk the show floor every morning, uh my manager would go, hey, listen, we just got a new bedroom suit in, and you're going to have to take the one out and move everything down and put it into the price point that it needed to be in. And some of that stuff was really, really heavy. But it
Of
was, it
course,
was,
it wasn't called visual merchandising. It was a display department in the old days. Do you remember a company called This End Up?
oh, yeah.
Well, this end up was also one of the companies of Melville, and we did a lot of those stores in those old days and so on. And I actually did quite a few of this end up even after I had left Melville and became one of their architects, and did KB, and did Tom McCann and Foxmore and Chess King, and all of them. It was amazing, amazing story.
Hey, listen, that story right there was worth this interview, right? As far as I'm concerned. I mean, last week I was down at SARA, which is the Society of American Registered Architects. They have
Yep.
I'm doing some stuff with them in the magazine. Anyway, they had a meeting with some local students in Atlanta down at TVS's office downtown in Atlanta, and NCARB was in there, which is the certification board for to get your
Yeah,
architecture license.
National Council of Architecture Registration Boards.
Correct, and carbs.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I was familiar with them, but I really didn't really know about all the different things that you needed to do to get your license. So I was in there with a bunch of students, and I went down there with my editor because I had met this guy on Zoom, but I never met him. And I said, hey, Fabian, look, you're down there. I'll come down there and I'll meet you in person. But it was really, really interesting to hear about all the different things that you need to do to get your license and
right.
and to keep your license. And some of these guys had taken the test, some of them had passed it, some of it hadn't passed it. But it was really, really interesting. And since this year, my wife's an interior designer. She'd done a lot of bathrooms, basements, and stuff, color consulting, and so when we bought our land in 2020 for our empty nester gig, I told her, I said, look, if we build this house, we're going to build it. I don't want to hire a contractor to do it. We're going to build it ourselves. And so we can learn it and you can have it for your portfolio. So the HOA came down to me on the end of 2023 and they said, Mr. Corson, if you don't start building your house, we're going to start fining you. There's only 52 homes up there. It's up on the lake. It's got a dock
Right.
permit.
Very nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all southern ranches, and
Right.
so I said, "Look, I'll go through the permitting process." I found a contractor in the county that I was building in. You needed to have a license to build, or you had to pay cash for your house so you could get
Mhm.
away from the municipality. So I found a contractor that I had on my cover back in I don't know 2015, I forget.
Right.
But he got out of retail and commercial and got into the lake frontage residential side. So I called him up. I said, "Hey, what's going on? Long time no hear. I see him on Facebook." I said, "Look, here's my gig. I have this land. I want to be the contractor, but I don't have a license. Will you pull my permits for me? I'll build the house. I'll be like the project management firm. You just have to pull it, and we'll deal with all the subs." And so now that we're on the downhill, now I'm going to go get my contractor's license because the lender that financed us says, "Look, there's a housing shortage. We want to build some more homes." And my on my mother's side, they've been in construction since 1888, demolition, steel
Right.
outside of Philadelphia.
You
So
said 1888?
yeah, 1888. Been in bit and still in
Okay.
business today. It's called Mayor Pollock Steel. And
Okay.
as one of the grandsons, whenever in Philadelphia, you got your license at 16. So all the grandsons, when you got your driver's license, you had to go work in the scrapyard. No, if you wanted to drive, period. Back then the girls, that was just the way it was. They probably put girls in the scrapyard these days. I don't know, but back then it was just the boys.
Right.
So
Right.
my first superintendent was my Uncle Frank Schuler, may he rest in peace. But he was one bad mofo. And if you weren't there at 6:55 in the morning, raring to go with your acetylene torch, you were in big trouble. And my grandfather was in WW2. He was a combat engineer underneath Patton. So he built all of
Wow.
the bridges that the Allies bombed. So I've got killer Super 8 videos of all the tanks and Jeeps coming
Oh,
back.
wow.
But anyway, so I come from a construction gig. So when Nicole was going on projects with you and all that stuff, I was down at the scrap yard growing up and all that stuff. And when I was in New York, I would go into the showroom and hide between all the sofas. So I kind of had that both. I had the retail, I had the
Right.
construction, and right now I'm a builder. I used to build it with paper, ink, and postage. Now I do it digitally, but I'm a builder, kind of just like you. And I've taken everything, and even my athletic career, I've taken, how to deal with wins and losses. You got to have thick skin, and you can't change the scoreboard, but you want to improve on your stats. And I've taken all those things. So your story, telling it the way it was, first of all, you made the call. Second of all, I don't interview, telling that, the big company, I don't interview except on the weekends. I don't want to ruin my other job. That is a quality that many people do not have. And,
Correct. Yeah.
it's got to be in you. And I give you kudos for, standing your ground. But you did break the chain when the chairman said, "Hey, you got to meet me during the
Yes.
week," But
Yes.
sometimes you have to do that to get where you want to go. And
Yes.
it's so nice to have your kids working with you. My son, he's an FA mechanic. He went to FA mechanic school. So,
Right.
but
Right.
he was like, "Dad, when are you going to give me your company?" I said, "Brody, you got to go get fired about 3 or 4 times before you work
Right.
for me. Because first of all, I'm just like he used to call me Sergeant Carter. And it." I just said, look, you got to go learn and listen, publishing, it's a rough business. You just you want to work with your hands, but if you want to come in, you can come in. So when he was going through mechanic school, my wife's a federal contractor too. So, well, we bid on little stuff. Anyway, he was my bird dog, and we would go through stuff every morning. And but working with your family is just there's nothing better. There's nothing better having it in there, and because the wealth of knowledge that you have up in your mind. Nicole probably absorbed all that. Plus, as a dad, she knew how you were too, right?
Well, I will tell you, I am great at telling war stories. I try to do that with all my seniors and directors, as well as my daughter. But, when your daughter grows up with you and has an opportunity to be on your side, she hears a lot more stories. And by hearing those stories, you don't make the same mistakes. And some of those stories have nothing to do with my firm, but I would always listen to stories in the field or from a vendor or from a client. Look what happened on this other job, etc. It's so important to share those experiences with your staff. And when you do it, they become better because they all of a sudden had that same experience as if it happened to them, but it didn't. And they didn't have to worry about having an issue. So,
Listen, if you're not pushing yourself, and you're not making mistakes, you're not pushing yourself hard
yes,
enough, in my
yes,
opinion. And in construction, I don't care if it's facility maintenance, new build, renovation, whatever it might be. If you're not out there having a hindrance or a pothole or an obstacle that you're
sure.
going to have to deal with, you're fooling yourself. And if you got to improve to get better at your trade. And no matter what you're doing, you got to make mistakes. It's just like an athlete, I mean, Ty,
Absolutely.
you're a golfer. So Tiger Woods, back in the day in his heyday, he might not have had the greatest round. He'll go back right out on the driving range and go hit another 500 balls or whatever.
Right,
So
right.
it's that practice makes perfection. You got to tweak things as time goes on, but you got to have a positive mindset. But you got to love what you do, and that's what the coolest thing was that you were an
Absolutely.
architect at heart. But architects these days, they're basically almost like project management firms. And I don't mean to insult anybody out there on either side,
No,
architect,
not at all.
because everything is tied to the hip. The construction guy is tied to the architect, the engineer, the superintendent. And I had a guy one day, he was on my show, and he goes, construction is like your finger. Your fingernail's basically the construction project, and the rest of your finger is the maintenance, the refresh and whatever. And then depending on how long that that store is going to stay, in its current state, it goes from chain to chain. But every 3 to 5 years, they're going to refresh 4 to 6, whatever that is, and come out with a new prototype. But it's uh it's all tied to the hip. And between liability, the legality of it, and it's come almost, it's almost like having in football, you'll have the guard, you'll have the tackle, you have the center,
Right.
and it's all of those components if you want to get the project done. And listen, I just lived it over the last 7, 8 months building the house.
Right.
My wife, she had an infrastructure in place. She had the electrician, the plumber, the flooring, and so all that stuff for the interior. But we had to go find a concrete guy. I had to go find a grader. I had to go find a framer. I had to find a roofer. Had to
Right.
find a civil engineer to do my HLP and the perk test and all that stuff. And boy, and so I put a residential column in the magazine, and I would feature a new house build, but then I would put my own column in there. What did I learn? So I talked about dealing with the municipality, how to pick your subs, why you pay these guys the money that don't nickel and dime them because they have the tools, they do it every day. It's like
Right.
hanging
Right.
doors. Hanging
Right.
doors is an art. And I have 27 doors I'm getting delivered next week, and they all have to get hung. And I was like, you could probably do it. I'm like, babe, I am not hanging those doors or even putting in the heart. I can hire a guy that does it every day, and he has a helper. He'll bang those out in a day where I'm going to be in there for a week doing it. Not that I can't do it, but I'm going to pay someone that's a professional so they swing nice. They're
Right.
tall doors. They're 8 feet. They're not junk. And so certain things I'll do, but all in all, I was like, and I would hire all the subs that I dealt with because they were all kind of tied to the hip. It's a good old boy network north of Atlanta. I'm up here, up in the sticks kind of, and they all know each other and they all know the inspector and all this stuff. So I kind of kept it local, and but uh, I learned so much. I was a pain in the ass. Like, I was like, okay, tell me about this slurry test. What the heck is that? I want to know that. And I'm taking video and I'm looking at all this stuff, and they go, who is this guy? Is he the builder? Is he the owner? I'm like, I'm both. I own the land. I'm the builder, and I'm probably going to be living here too. I'm the homeowner.
Right.
So your story about doing all that. Oh my God. The more you know, the more important you are. And then sometimes people don't see it. But when you made the transition to go out on your own was probably the best decision that you ever did because being an entrepreneur, you go down, you're the last person on the ship. You go, you're the last person there that gets paid, and it's a whole different. Am I right on that assumption?
Well, I will tell you, David, the gentleman who fired me, who's a great good friend, always says to me, gosh, Nick, I made you what you are today. And I
Yeah.
always thank him and so on.
Yeah.
And it worked out very well. But again, a lot of luck goes along with that. You partner with your partner with your clients or the vendors or the contractors, and that's how you get work. But that's how you become better at what you are, and so on. And we were very fortunate. Me starting the firm, and I have a gentleman that's with me right now who started with me in 1980 at Melville that knocked on my door 2 weeks after I left Melville and said, I want to work for you. And so he has now worked for me since 1980. So we're talking about 45 years. I mean, seriously. And I always think he's like 28 years old, although I guess he's got to be 65 and doing a
Yeah.
wonderful job. And
Yeah.
so,
But he doesn't work for you. He works with you, right?
oh, absolutely.
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 I,
Absolutely.
I I always tell people like,
Yeah.
I have an editor, I have an artist, I'm like, listen, we work, you work with me. You don't work for me. I empty the tray. I can do some editing. I can do all this stuff, and
Absolutely.
and
We would staple drawings together, but I will say I've been very, very fortunate to surround myself with such great people. I have such a great staff. It is almost mind-boggling. And that when I had 120, yeah, I had a great staff, but it is so hard to manage 120 people, despite the fact you have directors and seniors and so on. It's just impossible to do it because you need to know everybody. You've got to share in every part of their life, including personnel, the personal part of it, the children, how all that's going, because it's important to your business. It's important to the people you share your day with, and so on. And I do share my day with them all the time, and
So
so
out of the 30,000 projects that you've done, what was one of your favorites that you did? Whether it was new or a renovation.
I would say that, um, believe it or not, it wasn't. I mean, it's a retail project. When I first started working, I got a great opportunity through a friend to do a Brooks Brothers job. And it was the Brooks Brothers flagship store in Chicago. So, what the hell is Brooks Brothers giving me just in business a year that particular job? But I met a gentleman there who liked me. And I'll tell you a really crazy story is that, he wanted me to do well, and he was concerned that my number was not enough. Although I changed it slightly, he was happy with he because he wanted more observation visits. He wanted me to be on the job more, and so on. And today you'll also find out that most of the clients we work with, other than Coach, who has a very good construction department, most retailers, those brands don't have people out in the field, and they have to rely on their architect more. But Brooks Brothers, going back, we're talking the latter part of 1987, the beginning of 1988. I had only been in business maybe a year at that point, and I did this two-story flagship store for Brooks Brothers going way back. Now, I've done some great projects. Valentino's store on Fifth Avenue, although it's not open today, we did it about 5, 6 years ago. Bill Mandelitis, who's one of my VPs, was oversaw the job. I want to say that I think rent was $1.5 million a month. I think the project was well over $25 million. We worked with a designer in Italy. If you work with all these luxury brands, you'll find out they're all out of Milan, and they all, have their own little act and so on. And you've got to work with them to make sure everything works properly. But I will say that that was a wonderful project. But I want to really address your question, David, which is that was my project, that Brooks Brothers. I was there all the time. It was just a wonderful project for me, and so on.
Well, I had plenty of Brooks Brothers suits over the years, and uh, it I think of Russ DeLezy when I think of Brooks Brothers. Way back in the day hey Russ, if
Russ
you're listening
Felice
out
has
there,
worked for everybody.
yeah, well, no, listen, it's retail. You see the writing on the wall,
Right,
you go.
right,
But
right.
hey Russ, if you're listening out there, I remember when you were Brooks
Russ
Brothers.
is a dear friend,
Yeah.
and he's with the contractor now. But I want to tell you a little quick story about Brooks Brothers. So um, they decide they're going to have this gigantic party for the opening, and they were bringing in a museum situation. They had invited all these specialty guests and so on. He says, Nick, I want you to wear a Brooks Brothers suit. I said, well, I wear a Menegilda, I wear a Canali, but I don't wear Brooks Brothers. He says, you cannot be at this opening in a suit other than Brooks Brothers. I couldn't find a suit that fit me. I was much thinner than I had to go into the boys department to get a suit.
That's a
But it
great
was a
story.
wonderful event and so on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
The I can't imagine 30,000 projects and remembering them all. And
No, I don't remember them all, but
yeah,
there's
yeah.
a lot of projects there.
Yeah, and look, I have X amount of issues that I've done over my 25 years. My biggest issue I think I ever did was 276 pages, and I had Bernie Reese on the cover from Macy's, and yeah, yeah, and
Sure.
and then I had another one, Johnny Rock, but they were like wedding catalogs, you know. I mean, they were like
Right,
$250,000 books, you know, and
right, right.
covered the payroll, and it was just it was just an amazing day. But now everything has changed, and
Yeah,
you know, talk about as I'll just bridge into that, and then we'll
sure.
finish up. You know, you were basically at ground zero up there in the Northeast, and the March 2020, everything gets shut down, and we've been on this roller coaster for 4 or 5 years. We're out of
Mm,
the tunnel,
yeah,
but we're still kind of lingering and talking about it. What was
sure.
one of the how did you weather the storm and maintain your composure to still be standing today that our listeners would like to hear?
Interesting question. The roller coaster was really the good, the bad, and the ugly. The ugly was because there were situations going on. We don't have to redo that, but friends of the family or family members, some of them died. We had 120 people in February of 2020. By the end of the year, we were down to 48. What happened is there was some money that was given to different companies called PPP, Payroll Protection Plan. We were fortunate enough to get some money. What happened is that we had a big layoff, and the people that we had to lay off, I made a deal with them where I paid for their health insurance until I was told I'm not allowed to do it. But we got away with it for probably 6 months and very appreciative. I'm going to tell you how that filters back down to the end game. And what happened is we had about 35 people we retained. So we lost really about 85 people. We kept in contact with a number of them. Today we have 48. We've brought back a number of other people and so on. But what we did is, and I'm telling you my personal, what we did as a firm, we got some money, which was good for us to continue working. We created charrettes in our business where we gave projects, not a real project that was going to be built, but a project to a group of people, a team here and a team there, a cannabis dispensary or an office space or a retail space. And we had them do that because we wanted to keep as sharp as possible during the time. All of my people, whether or not they were salaried or on payroll, hourly. There weren't that many hourly. We went back to them and said, look, in order to retain this group of 35 people, I'm going to ask you if you could handle taking a 20% reduction in your pay. Everybody put up their hand. We had a meeting and they all said yes. I will tell you at the end of 2020, because we had some money in the bank from profits in the prior year, at the end of 2020, we paid everybody back at 20%. So they got their money in one lump sum. We actually even gave everybody a $2,000 bonus. And so I'm very appreciative. Although we lost a ton of money as a loss, we were happy that we created the strongest family we had ever had in my 30-something years of being in business. We were very fortunate, but I mentioned the good, the bad, and the ugly. The bad was the layoff. People that we knew had passed away. The bad was, of course, that same thing that we lost a lot of friends because we made friends with everybody that worked for us. But the good was we created the family. And what happened is that we continued a great continuation of friendship with the people that we laid off, many of whom worked for us in a different capacity now on the outside and so on. So the good, the bad, and the ugly. We were the key to that whole thing is never ever give up, never give up, and so on. I mean, we're doing projects that had no client fee to them. I mean, just to make sure everybody stayed busy. And they stayed busy the 40 hours. It wasn't as though they just would say no, etc. And then we started working more remotely with the people. And so from then to today, we have created more of a management group where we're managing over 500 projects a year now with our 48 people.
Mm-hmm.
Although a lot of our outside people that are drawing for us separately, not through Tricarico Architecture and Design, are the people that were laid off, are happy to do it. The numbers are good. They want to work from home anyway. It has worked out to be so good for us. It's mind boggling. The one thing we did have to do is that we had an engineering group of about 15, 17 engineers, MEP, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing.
Mm-hmm.
And we only retained two to oversee all of the outside consultants we use now because we want to review drawings that are done by outside people, just to check to make sure they make sense and that nothing is crazy and so on. So I would say that we became a tight knit firm more than we could ever believe, and I really started believing there is a lot of craziness to wanting to grow, and you could do that, but unless you put the right people in that growth, if you want to grow with just people that draw and so on, and don't put all those different project manager layers, senior project directors, accounting, human resources, it's never going to grow right. And I have a feeling that even when we got to 120 people, we were doing some of the right things, but we didn't have enough people in between all of the different groups. And that hurt us a little bit too, because today we're much more successful as a firm and in a profit picture too than we were with 120 people. Mind boggling.
A lot of the people that I've talked to, whether they're vendors or brands, architects, engineers, contractors, whatever they might be, over the last, couple, 3 to 4 years I've been doing the
Sure.
podcast, so many people have told me that, it was a bummer in 2020, but as they look back, they learned more about their business. They learned about that, life work balance, and that you can trust people, and that they probably could have had more projects, but they couldn't find project managers or superintendents to oversee the job, and you don't want to ever bite off more than you can chew. But so many people, had unbelievable years, and now that like I said, we're out of the tunnel, and that the election's over finally, and everybody's kind of got a really good attitude these days of what's going on. So, um, listen, I had just done my 10th anniversary summit. I had the most people ever attend, and I think it was up in Milwaukee, looking at hotels, and Tom Hanks got the bug, and everything closed up, and was supposed to go to Columbus in Ohio to see DU play Ohio State in the shoe that weekend, and then I had to make a decision. I was fighting with my printer. I was like, half my circulation is furloughed. Their offices are closed. I'm just going to print these magazines and they're going to get thrown in the trash or and he's like, Dave, you've been a publisher forever. It's economies of scale and this and that. So I bit the bullet. I put the issue out, and then I stayed up I get up in the middle of the night. My wife's like, where are you going? I'm like, I got to think. And then my artist and my editor were like, "Hey, we got plenty of content. Let's just go digital." And
Right.
we
Right.
had it. I was lucky. I had a digital magazine forever. If I didn't, I don't know if I would have made it, but I did have it, and it was a godsend. But I as the owner, I mean, you just don't know what to do because no one, everybody's, oh, it's gonna be a couple of weeks, and here we are 5 years and we're still talking about the thing. And but myself, I was a print face to face, so I made the transition to digital. Then I didn't really understand what it was, and I took a sabbatical in 2023. I got Google, Microsoft certified, SEO, all this other stuff that you need to know about digital. I thought I knew everything. I didn't. You can always teach an old dog new tricks, and it. It's been amazing. And then believe me, I never had 49 million people hitting the website in content. I mean,
Right,
I'm a
right,
content creator right now, where before I was doing stories. But
right.
you can't do anything without people. There is no I in team. So,
Oh, yeah.
you
They're
know,
all worried about AI, but AI is going to be controlled by people. Uh,
oh yeah.
but
Listen, I
going
use
back to digital, you got to recognize that architects were working on paper with a pencil
yeah, or a
and
slide
safety
rule.
pin
Yeah.
and so on. And if the progression of how it is today with Microsoft and the computer 286, 386, 486, the software. We need renderings, etc. The Matterport for surveys. All of this stuff has come such a long way, and it will continue. And you know what? It'll get better and better, but it's going to be controlled by people. And how are they going to control it? They're going to manage all of this. And
Oh yeah.
so, although, I will tell you in 1967, I remember we had a field trip in college going to an architect's office that had a computer. It was like one of the first computers. And we walked into the office and then we looked in this room that was probably 20 by 40. And he had one computer in there and it was drawing obviously faster than someone would do manually, but
Hmm.
so slow it's scary.
Yeah.
Today, it's amazing how fast everything does go, but it's managed properly. And it gives us a better opportunity to be able to oversee it properly and make sure everything's right, managing better than drawing as much and so on.
Yeah. If someone was out there on Commercial Construction Coffee Talk and they wanted to reach out to you maybe about a project that they're thinking about doing, or maybe they want to talk about the old days and some of the brands that you mentioned,
Okay.
how would someone reach out to you there at Tricarico?
Well,
D.
I've always been NJT at Tricarico.com. N is Nicholas, J is Joseph for my middle name, T for Tricarico. NJT at Tricarico.com is my email address, and I welcome that. And then our website is www.tricarico.com. Oh,
See,
I'm
someone's
sorry.
already calling you. They haven't even seen the episode yet. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes. Sorry about that.
Hey, that's okay.
Yeah.
So listen, if you're out there and you want to bounce some questions off Nick, he's seen a lot, over 30,000 projects, and he's worked in the corporate America. He's an entrepreneur, golfer, father, all that good stuff. Send him an email, go to the website, send him a message, and talk. You never know where things might go, and you're talking to one of the icons here right now, so we
Oh,
really
thank you.
appreciate it. Um, uh, and you know what? I'm going to use, listen, I was going to ask you for a phrase, but the phrase that you just said, never give up, I love that. That's like one
That
of
is
my
the
favorites.
phrase. Never give up.
Yep.
Never give up.
Yeah, I remember when I was at Nielsen, they overtook an old Montgomery Ward's down by Ground Zero, and
Right.
uh, my I right before Thanksgiving, right after 9/11, I got a note from senior management up in New York, and they were like, "Hey, you got to get your team coming." One of my reps was in the room. I'm like, "Hey, you got to come home." And he goes, "That's not a good thing." I'm like, "I know, it's not." Anyway, they made me lay off my staff. They had about 150 They bought our company. We had 10 magazines. We had Global Shop, 8 shows. I was management. It was a nice
Right.
payout for me, but I was with Nielsen. They closed about 50 books, and my construction book got the axe. And I still had my Point of Purchase magazine, but my heart wasn't in it. I was a construction guy, and so I offered to buy it, and they wouldn't sell it to me. And I said, "Look, I'm going on the road to Dallas. gonna go talk to Radio Shack back in the heyday, and
Radio Shack, right?
yeah, Radio Shack. Anyway, and a couple other people. When I come back, you're gonna make your decision. So when I came back, I said, "You're gonna sell me the company," and they said no, and I said, I'm resigning." So I resigned December 17, 2001, and here I am today. And everybody, my parents told me, "Don't do it. You've got an expand." And I was like, "Look, this is where it is." The funny thing though was, talking about Nicole, my son was born the same year I launched retail operations construction. And it was
Okay,
kind of like my kid too. And someone had to stand up for it. And
sure.
I just kind of rolled the dice and I said, I'm going to fill the void. And here I am standing, but that first issue I put out when Home Depot was building 140 stores a year, I had Mark Beers with his 2x4. Boy, did he get riled on
Right.
that cover. And, and now, you got to love what you do. You got to have fun. And the day you stop learning is the day you should go do start something else. I try to learn something new every day. And listen, I just learned a lot from you in general. So, uh, but listen, all you out there, you hear what Nick said? Never ever give up. So, as we finish up here, couple things. First,
Sure.
on the construction site, we want you to be safe. We want you to be able to get home, have dinner with your family, your spouse, your husband, your wife, your kids, your
Right.
partner, your pets, whatever. Have fun, get some REM sleep, and be able to do it the next day. Number two, you got to stay hydrated. Okay, on the construction site, that's the athlete in me. When you get dehydrated, you get headaches, you make bad passes, you get hurt. So stay liquefied, even though it might, I know it's cold down here. Old Man Winter's got a few more days down here in the south, but it's cold. You still got to stay hydrated during the winter, and especially the summer. You'll get through your project, your day, as well as you're going to sleep much better at night. Last but not least, hit the like button so people can find this episode out with the YouTube algorithms and hear Mr. Nick's story. It's an awesome story, and we thank you for sharing it. And
My pleasure.
so, Nick, any final thoughts before we sign off?
Well, I will say that you want to stay close with your people and, understand them, and they have needs over and above your business needs. And I think that's very important to be able to share that. A lot of people say don't get involved in personal, but sometimes you got to because they're your family. And, we've always treated the Tricarico employees as family. And that's what we look at all the time. So,
The one thing we found out while building this house is that, we didn't ask them, "Hey, do you guys want some pizzas?"
right.
We bring up food out of the blue and feed them and this and that.
Sure.
Those guys got plenty of jobs, plenty of other contractors that they're trying to, that they're looking for them to get. And they just love my wife, man, because, treats them like family and she can dish it out when she needs to,
Right.
chop
Of
chop, let's
course.
go.
Right.
But the bottom line is you treat them right, you're going to get more out of them, you're going to get better work, and if they know that you're in their corner, it just changes the whole
Sure.
outlook
Sure.
of the game. So
Better
I'm
job.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So listen, if anybody wants to reach me, I'm at David C at ccr-mag.com. I knew Nick actually is a marketing person who reached out to me because I had a little question. Hey, do you want to be a guest? Or I did an e-blast. That's how we got on here. But listen, you got to send me something. We've got all sorts of platforms to put stuff on. It's like playing the lottery. If you don't buy a ticket, you can't win. So if you don't send me something to look at, I can't. And we talked and we picked a date, and here Nick is. And I'm honored to have you on here. You're like in the Hall of Fame as far as I'm concerned in retail design. It's just I like I said, we've known each other a long time. I still have some hair there too, so it's just getting grayer.
I do.
Yeah, yeah, you too. So, well, listen, say goodbye from North Jersey.
Well, it's very cold here, very windy. Although, as they've said, we're going to see spring soon. And go out and play golf and have fun and enjoy your job. Your job is important to enjoy. If you don't enjoy it, you're in the wrong business.
Absolutely.
Okay.
If you don't like what you do, go do something else because life's
Right.
too short. And if
Right.
you're out there in the links, hit them long and straight and stay on the
Okay.
fairway. So I'm going to sign off from Sugar Hill, which is just below the Beaver Dam on Lake Lanier. And it's freezing down here today. And But it's supposed to snow, I think, the next couple of days, and on Monday it's going to be 72. So
There
it's
you go.
just mind-boggling. So in any event, Nick, pleasure. I will see you when I, get up and we do one of our receptions up there, coming in the spring and summer. And everybody out there in commercial construction coffee talk land, have a great rest of the week. You got one more week left basically in February, and boom, third month of Q1, and here comes
Yep.
springtime and the pollen, and everything's gonna get covered in green down here in the south. So in any event, listen, everybody have a great rest of the year, stay positive, and we will see you next time on another episode of Commercial Construction Coffee Talk. Nick, pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for the opportunity. I appreciate it, David.
All right. Cheers, everybody.
Okay. Bye bye.
See ya.